Welcome to another episode of the Symphony Micro Podcast. I'm sitting down here with Zak Kosher, entrepreneur, founder of Nectar Social, a social media marketing agency here in Seattle. And today's topic is from 0 to 1. And what that means is going from 0, sitting on your couch with an idea, to executing that idea and being at step 1.
Yep.
There's 10 steps. We're just talking about today from getting from 0 to 1. So
Start
us off, Zach. What you got?
0 to 1, man. That's got to be the hardest of all 10 steps, right? It's that first leap. It's typically correlated with leaving something else behind and starting another thing, right? I think it's hard, and I think people get stuck really easily there in that first 0 to 1 step. It's really about starting up the flywheel. It's like taking that first few steps on your morning jog. Those first few steps are going to hurt. Your bones are going to feel a little tired. But as you get going, that's when things smoothen out. That's when you feel like you can, keep moving. You have that sense of direction, really.
Building that momentum.
Yeah, building up momentum.
I got a bullet point.
Yeah.
So you talk about building momentum, and I think getting emotions involved at an early stage is a big hiccup that people hit. So just basically, Jocko Willink talks about this, but plan, execute. Plan what you want to do and then execute it and iterate on that. Don't try and connect your emotions to the outcome, because early on, you're not going to get far no matter what you do. Like we see on social media or on mainstream sources, like, oh, so-and-so's making money doing this, they're 21 years old, they have a startup.
Yeah.
That's realistically, they got a bunch of help from people higher up.
Yeah.
Or they got lucky, or a combination. Look at you, you're wearing the Umbras.
Yeah.
How do you say it?
Umbras
sunglasses. Those guys are crushing it. And so for me, like looking at those guys, it's like, it's overwhelming, and I almost get emotions involved, because it's like, well, I'm at 0 when it comes to starting a business, but I do want to start a business. So actually, I can learn from you in this micro podcast here. So what do you got for like overcoming those emotions and not being connected to the outcome right now?
Yeah, what I see so often, I work with a lot of young entrepreneurs too. A lot of our clients are our age, and it's awesome. I love it. It's so much fun to work with people who are just young go-getters. But that's something different. What I see a lot of times is just paralysis by analysis. A lot of people in those early steps and early stages, including myself. I experienced this very regularly early on, which is just overanalyzing things to the point where there's 7 or 8 good options in front of you, or good directions, and this one has pros and cons, and this one has some great pros, but I don't know about these. And you sit there and you analyze things to the point where, at the end of the day, when you take perspective on where you're at right now, you're just at start. You haven't even moved yet. You haven't even moved a piece forward, right? So rather than sitting here and evaluating and spending all your time doing that, take action. Take that first step. Prioritize action before evaluation. I think if you can try and fail, that's a quicker way, not only quicker, but a more impactful and long-lasting way of understanding your direction than looking at 7 or 8 different things, continuing to bring different options into the fold, and having this just overwhelming sense of where do I, which one of these is going to work.
How often do you hear someone say, like, oh, I've got so many great ideas? It's like, okay, well, how many have you executed on?
Right, yeah.
Because an idea without any action is worthless.
Yeah, execution is everything. We've talked about this, I think, on past podcasts too, but yeah, and I'm a big fan of anytime I feel that level of paralysis in analyzing something, just stopping it right there and just, I'm doing that and let's go. What can I do to take action? What can I do to get to the next step? And then, I think analysis by paralysis, or actually paralysis by analysis, I think that happens even on a day-to-day kind of micro basis too. If you stack your mountain of daily tasks too high, you have all the shit in front of you, you don't even know where to start. You know what I mean? So on a more menial level, it's like, keep your mountain a bit lower, make it palatable, bite off what you can chew. Start from there. Yeah, at least you're taking action moving forward.
Yeah, that's the prioritize and execute thing that Jocko talks about, is like knowing what's priority number 1. You're going to have, everyone has a million different tasks that they want to get done, right?
Yeah.
Knowing which one to prioritize and then just doing it, and putting the other ones that are lower priority to later is so key. Like,
so key.
I find myself all the time, like halfway through a task, jumping over to my other computer and doing something else, and then I'm like, wait, I'm not even done with that other task. It happened this morning. I was working on a podcast, I went and did some work, and I was, I haven't even published that podcast yet. So prioritize, execute is something that I just think about all the time. It's 2 words, and it just keeps me focused on how it basically like drives a lot of my actions and decision making.
Yeah, and along those lines too, minimizing distraction. I think, maybe the reason why you jumped out of that task is because you were distracted with something, and then you sit back down, and you're like, where did I leave off? And I'll start this one. So yeah, minimizing distraction. I think distraction is a precursor to inefficiency. So
I think we should do a whole other micro pod on
Distraction.
minimizing distractions, because there are some actual tangible tactical things you can do to literally, it sounds simple, but just putting your phone in another room, stuff like that. Before we move on, you mentioned being in this situation. We're talking about 0 to 1, where you have a bunch of different options. You're early in your career, maybe you're making a career pivot, maybe you're just interested in starting some sort of project on the side, but there's too many options and you end up not taking any of them. Yeah. And I think one of the keys to understand here, and Gary Vee talks about this a lot, but our careers, especially nowadays, we're going to be working into our 70s. Our careers are going to be long, and if you actually just realize it that way, it's okay, now you can have some patience, and you can pursue one thing and not be overly concerned with the comparison to other people, because it's a marathon, man. There's people, and we grew up in pretty affluent communities over here in Seattle, and I always remember thinking about it, man, there's people in the NBA making millions of dollars that'll be broke when they leave the NBA. Meanwhile, there's other kids that are in debt in college that eventually will have more money and more ability to have impact and live the life that they want. So it's really a long game. And it's an understanding that I was fortunate to come across at a pretty young age. And man, I'm laying those bricks right now. A big foundation for my future is being willing not to just follow what's going to pay me the most, especially right out of college, and just understanding patience is pretty key to career success.
I mean, when you're starting something, it's not going to work right away. I mean, 99% of the time, it's not going to work right away. And I've been working on my own thing for 2 years now, and it's slowly but surely just kind of chugged along. You know what I mean? And it's gone in the right direction. But man, it's taken a ton of work, and it's taken a lot of time to even get where I am now. Yeah. And if I was the type of person that was going to overanalyze and say to myself, I'm not going to compare myself and say, look, I'm not, where I thought I would be, or where I'm seeing other people are that I admire. It's if I was going to analyze myself that way, then I would paralyze myself, because I would feel, discouraged. I would feel like I wasn't stacking up, but I don't pay attention to that. I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to myself and how I'm pursuing what I want and how I'm moving forward. And as long as I can just continue to be happy and healthy and excited about what I'm doing, that's all that matters too. And the rest of it kind of falls in after. But
that's a valuable lesson for sure. Your only competition is yourself.
It's only yourself.
You just gotta be better today than you were yesterday, better tomorrow than you were today.
Yeah.
I learned this lesson bouldering, mountain biking.
Yeah.
You look to your left and there's a 14-year-old girl who's sending incredibly something that I'll probably never be able to do my whole life. And that's totally okay. There's something climbing a bouldering problem, and they've been doing it their whole life. That's what they're the best at, and it's okay that I'm not going to be discouraged by that. I'm just going to say, oh wow, look, I did something today that I couldn't do last week. That's what drives me. And so it's the same thing with business. It's the podcast, for example. When I first started this podcast, I'd be sweating. I think you were the second guest at the podcast. We'd be nervous, sweating.
I was nervous as hell. Yeah.
Exactly. And now we've done it a handful of times and built that momentum. We've gotten from 0 to 1. We're at step 1. So good shit, man.
Yeah, we just kept it moving. You put an hour in, it's that was kind of shitty, but whatever. We could compare that and be oh, it sucked. We shouldn't be doing this.
Just
keep going.
Brings me straight to my next bullet point, which is feeling unqualified or feeling like you're not good enough to start. I think that's something that people are oh, if I want to.
That's a big one. Yeah.
If I don't have the prerequisites to do what this job asks, maybe you're applying for a job and says you need 4 to 7 years of experience. I have 1 year of experience. Doesn't mean you shouldn't apply for that job. And the reason, I think, and this is just my personal belief, and I've talked to a lot of people about this who are further along in their career, but passion and curiosity and being able to tell a story around why you're doing what you're doing is way more important than what your resume says, your grades in college, what school you went to. People want to hire someone or work with people who have a reason for why they're doing what they're doing.
For sure.
So I think just having some passion is going to that's going to be more important than like actually just
Yeah. You always hear about those circumstances too, where unqualified or underqualified individuals will get jobs because they went about the application process in a way that really showcased how passionate they were about working in the industry or getting a start in this field. So I think that does it is very relevant. At the same time too, going back to like individuals trying to branch off and start their own business or do their own projects, I see that all the time too. I'll talk to people that are like, can I talk to you about how you started your business? And I'm like, absolutely, I'm always down to have those conversations. And what I see is like, yeah, I really want to start this thing, but like at this point, like going back to what you said, at this point in my career, I feel like I need to have at least 2 more years of experience, and then I need to have, I want to be able to at least do the X, Y, Z. They have this whole plan of like when they're going to start.
Yeah.
That's -1 to 0.
Yes.
You're planning out when you're going to be at 0. Like you're already here. Just start. You know what I mean? Like and so I hear that all the time.
It's so hard to wrap your head around that one though.
Yeah, it is.
Did you struggle with that when you were starting your agency?
Yeah, I did, and what I drilled it down to was like, yeah, maybe I'm way less qualified to start this than like 70%, 90% of people that I'm working with here at this agency. When I was young, I mean, still am, but I felt like I looked at the things that were more kind of determinant of whether I could sustain doing this for a period of time. Like, do I have at least one paying client that I can like at least hedge, them as like client number 1 and income source number 1? Yes. Am I fortunate enough to be able to take that leap financially at this time? Do I have some money saved up? Yes. Do I have a roof over my head? Yeah. So all these things, it's like, that's the more important, is can you create an environment, a scenario where you can take a leap of faith? Don't bring in the qualification aspect of it.
Yeah.
I mean, there are, situations, maybe if you're a lawyer, you have to be qualified for X, Y, Z.
Yeah,
before
lawyers
you start
are.
practice,
Yeah.
sure, I get that. But I'm more talking about, like, hey, I want to go be a photographer. Hey, I want to become whatever, like more of those things that don't need literal qualification.
Yeah.
Don't have that time.
My boss, Chase Jarvis, says you got to do the verb to be the noun. Simple as that.
Nice,
You
yeah.
want to be a photographer, got to go take photographs. As
Yeah.
soon as you go outside and start taking photographs, now you're a photographer.
Right.
And you might not be a good photographer, not a published photographer, but like you've done it.
Yeah.
So he often he just actually finished this 6-week book club about basically what we're talking about. It's like he has this framework, and I'll mention it here because I think it's super valuable. We can take a deeper dive into it in his book called Creative Calling, but it's like idea, imagine, design, execute, amplify. So just really high level is like imagining. This is a step that a lot of people miss, and I think we should have mentioned it on this From 0 to 1 podcast, because if you go straight to the design, if you go straight to planning before you imagine what's possible, you're gonna skip steps. Like I made this mistake for sure. I just went straight into designing and executing, which is, okay, I wanna be a photographer, and I'm just gonna start acting, which is like, for me, it was showing up to a networking group, starting to meet people in the industry. But I hadn't really fully imagined what I really want to do as a photographer. Is it real estate photography and portrait headshots and family photos and senior photos?
Yeah.
No, it was not that. So I spent a lot of time and energy doing these things that, looking back on it, yes, it was nice to have a camera in my hand. Yes, I did learn from those things, but I get reached out to by all my old clients, and I don't even want the work because it's not the type of thing that I want to do in the future. So that imagine phase is pretty crucial. And then design obviously is actually planning out the steps, executing them. There's a bunch of stuff in that. And then amplifying it, which is the social media side, which is the networking side, putting out into the world what you're doing once you're doing it. So
that's great.
I think that's a super cool framework on this From 0 to 1. And there's books on that shit. But what else you got? You got any other bullet points over there? Or are we exhausted?
I think we kind of hit it, man. I think it was just building that momentum by checking off tasks, and if you want to be a photographer, like you said, go out there and start shooting. If you want to have a social media company, just go out there and start sourcing clients and building a reputation, building a brand and framework and all of these things, and just bite off what you can chew, man. I think it's the biggest thing. I was just having a meeting with somebody yesterday, and they're trying to start a coaching business, and he was actually been a mentor of mine, and he's sitting down and wants my help with promoting and getting people to come and take his services. So he had these mind maps that he was showing me, and they were so elaborate and so immense, and the second I looked at it, I was just, in my mind, just in a blender.
Yeah.
And if I was in his position, I would not know where to begin. and he
mind maps of like all the different things he wants to do with the business.
Yeah, and it's like that stuff is great to me, but I think you got to hedge it with some action, because that mind map is going to get a lot clearer when you go out and try and fail, or try and redirect. Like you said, you go out and you shoot some wedding photography, you go out and you shoot some portrait photography for senior photos, and when you get done, you get a check, and technically you were a photographer in those instances, but at the end of it you realize, hey, that's not what I want to be doing. And that's, to me, that's so much more impactful than saying, on my mind map, do I want to do it? Maybe, not really. You'll never know the real answer to that question, honestly, until you go out and try and do it. So take action.
No energy is wasted too. Don't beat yourself up. Even if you have spent 5 to 7 years in a career that you don't like, you're still very early in your career. Like I said, we have long careers, and if you don't change paths now, I'll say it real fast, but I had a professor who, the last day of class, Professor Wowak, he said, if there's one thing that you remember from my semester, the full semester of college course basically, and he said, if there's one thing you remember, and this was the one thing that I remember from this class, I don't even know the name of the class, he said, there's 3 types of people. The first type of people loves their job. They wake up with passion, they go to work, they're super excited about it.
Yeah.
They are the rare few that is just, that's awesome.
Yeah.
The other group on the other end is people that hate their job. That's also good because they know they need to change.
Yeah.
And in that middle phase is the people who kind of like their job, maybe they're paid well, they might have some cool coworkers, maybe you can grow in the office.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. But those are the people that are at risk of waking up when they're 40 or 50 and saying, where did the last 25 years just go?
Yeah.
For me, the biggest fear I have in life is having regret.
Yeah.
So that's a piece of advice that just struck me like a gong,
Yeah.
I don't know where that.
Yeah, you gotta listen to that discontent, when you have
Yeah.
it. Why are you having it? What can you do about it? Is it reasonable? Is it unreasonable?
Yeah. Last thing I'll ask you. Sorry.
No.
Last thing I'll ask you is what sacrifices did you have to make early on? Because you, going from 0 to 1, you can't go out and party at the bar every weekend, for example. That's the easy sacrifice to make for me. But what else did you have to do? You talked in the last micropod about how hard you were working, but there's serious sacrifices that you have to be willing to make. One of my basketball coaches, I told him I was going to be a filmmaker. He was like, look at what other people in that industry are willing to sacrifice, and if you're not willing to sacrifice more than them, don't even try.
Yeah.
So what did you have to sacrifice?
Yeah, I sacrificed, I think the biggest thing is a social life. I definitely didn't go out on the weekends. I was working most weekends. I sacrificed.
I don't really have a social life either.
I still don't have a huge social life, but I sacrificed, I think, hours for my family. I sacrificed hours for myself. You can look at it multiple ways, but hours that I could be sitting on the couch, eating a bag of chips. That's not really an hour for myself. It's not helping myself, but you know what I mean. Just like those.
You sacrifice those luxuries that previously maybe.
Yeah, those hours that you have that you can throw at this or do this or whatever. Yeah, whatever the time you're doing with those hours is, or how you're spending them. I sacrifice those, and I definitely. When you look at the career trajectory too, I made a sacrifice leaving the corporate world and all of the things that I could gain there. When I was in the corporate world, I wanted to get out of it immediately and start my own business. Grass is greener, classic grass is greener situation, because the second I get over here and have my own business, I'm looking back at some of those luxuries of being in the corporate world, where you're just checking in and checking out at 5 o'clock you're done, and you're go get a drink, go hang out, you don't have homework to do, but I'm working at 7, I'm working at 8, I'm working at 9, I'm back up in the morning at 7, I'm working at 7, damn, that was kind of nice when I didn't have to do that, and I made more money there, but I'm happy with the direction I took. It's you have to sacrifice something.
And it's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone.
I think if you're listening to this podcast still, if you haven't turned it off, it probably is for you to make some sacrifices.
Yeah. You got some air time. You got a little extra time.
That's what it's all about. So let's wrap this one up.
Cool, man.
Yeah, another good one in the books.
Yeah, cheers, brother. Thank you.